Welcome to the Mike Litton Experience Podcast. Mike has over 31 years experience in real estate, finance, and investing. He's passionate about being a father, a teacher, a realtor, an investor, and a leader. Everyone has a story, and our passion is to help them tell it. And now, introducing the host of the Mike Litton Experience, Mike Litton.
So what can you expect from the Mike Litton Experience? You can expect stories that will inspire, motivate, advice that will sharpen your focus, and expert information on real estate, finance, and market conditions. Kevin Amolsch, thank you so much for joining us as our guest on the Mike Litton Experience. I'm super excited for our time together. And like we talked about before we hit record, everybody has a story, and our passion is to help them tell it. So with your permission, we'd like to start with where you were born, go all the way up to today, and then let's talk about what you're working on with Pine Financial Group and anything else you have going on, okay?
Yeah, let's do it.
Appreciate you being here, bud.
Yeah, Mike, I appreciate so much the opportunity. Excited to be here and excited to talk about Pine and myself. So I guess I'll start by saying I was born in Denver.
There you go.
I'm one of very few, Mike, this might surprise you or maybe not. I'm one of very few natives of Colorado. So you're from California.
Yeah.
A lot of people from California seem to be moving to Colorado. So we have a pretty heavy migration. So it's been from all over the country really. And but I was born here. After high school, I went into the Army and I got stationed in Colorado Springs. I know I skipped ahead there a little bit, but felt like I'm supposed to be in Colorado.
Yeah.
So I've decided to stay. Went to high school on the western side of the city of Denver. Played soccer. Ended up getting into rodeo. Started riding bulls.
Wow.
And that's actually why. That's interesting, right?
That's
cool. Actually something most people don't know about me because I don't talk about that all too often. I have a cousin that rode bulls. Oh yeah.
Yeah. And he actually lived in Denver for quite a while.
I wonder if I know him.
Randy Martin. Did you know Randy Martin?
I don't know Randy Martin. No.
Yeah, so Doris and Ray Martin are his parents. Doris is my aunt, my mother's sister, and Ray is my uncle. And then Jeff, Amy, and Randy all lived in Denver for 20-some years.
Oh, wow.
They built a company up there. So
I wonder if I've competed against him at one point.
You might have.
It is actually a pretty small world. And you think of Denver, a lot of people think of Denver as the old cow town because that's what it was for so many years. And it still has the first professional rodeo of the season is in Denver.
Yeah.
But it's so much different and so much different than that now. It's a little over 3 million people and very tech heavy. So it's not the old cow town. So to hear someone else rodeo and that lived in Denver surprised me a little bit, but
you know where Parker is?
I do.
So Parker is where my aunt and uncle ended up moving to. So they lived in Denver proper for a long time, many years, and then ended up moving out to Parker. Parker's like an old Western town. I mean, it's tons of history and really a cool place. But when they were buying out there, they bought a former Denver Broncos house. And they were complaining to me because at the time, naturally, I was in real estate and in California and all that. And there was a couple from California that had sold their house and they had, I want to say it was a couple of $1 million in their pocket. And they were trying to outbid my aunt and uncle, and man, my uncle was grumbling like there was no tomorrow.
He must have wanted that house.
Californians are going to ruin it here,
Yes.
So yeah.
It's still very similar to that. So Denver, you might know this, but it's the most expensive non-coastal city in the entire country.
Yeah.
So, but it's still far less than like most of cities in California. So it does still feel cheap.
Well, I'll tell you
or more affordable.
I'll tell you the coolest thing about Denver is, and I know you guys get a lot of guff about weather and all that kind of stuff, right? But the coolest thing about Denver, I think, is it's a semi-arid climate. So it's actually pretty dry there. People don't realize that. Like it'll snow, but then it'll be gone in no time.
Yeah, one day.
Right? It's not terribly humid. It's really a wonderful place to be when you're visiting, and it's also a wonderful place for people to live. I mean, especially if you're into outdoor stuff and
Yes.
all that kind of thing, right? Like Cherry Creek has one of the coolest bike paths I've ever seen in my life. It goes forever, like forever. It goes all the way around through, Denver. I mean, it's really cool. It's just we actually went there several years ago, 25 years ago now. I was offered a job there with a home builder and who's out of San Diego, and they wanted me to run their mortgage division out there. And they basically said, "Look, come out and pick out a house. We're going to put you in a house. We're going to basically, roll out the red carpet, yada yada." Right. So I take my wife out there, who is not a cold weather person. She was born on Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, to give you an example.
Yeah.
And her parents were born and raised in Puerto Rico. So to say she's a warm weather gal, right? Kind of an understatement. So we go up there and it snows 3 inches.
She probably never saw snow before.
Next morning we get up, we're going to Breckenridge. We're in my aunt's Navigator, and this Honda, we're on I-70, which is better known as the parking lot in Denver.
Yep.
And we're sitting in the parking lot on I-70, and this Honda Prelude comes down the center median out of control, completely out of control, doing probably 70 miles an hour, and splashes a bunch of slush, because the snow's melting, up against my wife's window on the driver's side back seat of the Navigator. She shot me a look. We never even looked at houses, dude. We were out of there.
Oh no.
And we were not going to live there. She was not bringing the babies there. That was the end of that deal. I mean, it was like, come on, give it a look. At least let's go look at houses. I mean, they're all brand new. They're going to build us a brand new house. Nope.
Oh man, missing out. Yeah,
but
300
really
days of
the
sun
weather
a
there
year.
is really cool. Like the climate is really cool, and it's attractive to people because it's so gorgeous, right? And there's so much to do. So I'm a big Denver fan, you can tell. So, I was
love it, Mike. And I've never lived anywhere. When I went to basic training, I was down in Georgia. And this was January. I went in January.
Yeah.
And it was cold at night, like really cold. But in the middle of the day, it was so hot. I'm like, this is like the middle of winter. I got to get back to Colorado.
It's feeling like a fish out of water, right? So can I ask you a question? Actually, let me ask you a few questions. Number one, why the Army?
Yeah. So, well, I wanted to get into the service. I knew that.
Why?
And I was really, okay, that's a good question. I was so sick of school, Mike.
Were you?
I was not a great student. I got decent grades, but it wasn't a passion for sure. I didn't like the homework and studying stuff I didn't even care about, So it's like I didn't want to go to college. I knew eventually I would, but I didn't want to immediately.
Right.
So I had some options. I can go into the service, or I could just go get a job and work. Right. So I just figured the service would benefit me later.
And how old were you?
I was 18.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And I chose the Army. They sold me on laser tag. The recruiter says, if you come in here and you go into the infantry, then you're going to train with lasers, and we're you put your vest on, you put the laser on your gun, you go around and you play a game. And it's not quite like that, I've learned, but they definitely got me on the laser tag. That's why I went infantry. And I was really choosing between the Marine Corps and the Army. And I chose the Army because of rodeo. They had a rodeo team at that time.
Really?
They dissolved it basically by the time I got out of basic training. So I never got to experience it, but
I never knew they had a rodeo team.
Yeah, they did. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
I was like, you're going to
that was the deal
breaker. What I love.
That was the thing that made you, I got you. I understand. Okay.
It's like, I felt like that was an easy way to go pro, but it didn't work out that way.
Well, get your reps in, right? Right. You're not having to pay to learn. You're literally, if you go into the Army and you're rodeoing for the Army, you're learning on their dime, right?
Yeah, I'm going to get paid whether I perform well or not, right?
I mean, it's kind of like a laser tag. You're learning on their dime. I'm just kidding. I'm sorry. I couldn't resist. So why bull riding?
I'm competitive. A lot of entrepreneurs, I'm sure you are too, as well. But we're competitive, and And there's nothing more competitive that I found than that. I mean, it's you against that animal. It's a true competition, and it's
Yeah.
very challenging. So I was just attracted to it watching, on TV, and ended up running into some people that did it and started talking to them. Said, "Can you help me get on? I just want to try it." And gosh, one try and I was hooked.
And these guys are intense. I
Oh, they're
mean, you've
tough.
got to be, no joke, you got to be a whole different level if you're going to be a bull rider, right? I grew up on a farm in Oklahoma,
Okay.
and my grandfather, who I farmed with for 9 years, um, bought a pair of chaps for Randy, my cousin, who was going to go bull riding. And Randy had come to my grandfather and said, I need a set of chaps. I need a pair of chaps. And my grandfather said, so why do you need a pair of chaps? And he said, well, I need a pair of chaps because I'm going to go be a bull rider. And so granddad didn't have a pair of chaps to give him. And so he bought him a pair, brand new, the way Randy goes, right? With his initials on them and all this stuff, right? And so he's really fancy. So he leaves. And as he's driving away, my grandfather turns to me and he says, those chaps are not going to help him survive on the back of a bull.
That's right. I did, I never had chaps. They were not required. They are
Well,
now.
they fly up and hit you in the face when you're on a bull, Bubba.
Yeah, but I got to tell you, they do help because
Come on, right?
I've been stepped on
I'm
multiple
sorry.
times.
To all you bull riders out there, I apologize. Okay,
You're fine.
right? Oh my goodness.
But yeah,
What
it's a
you
lot of
need is a helmet and a flak jacket. Let's be honest, right?
The vest was always a requirement, even when
Yeah.
I was in high school.
Yeah.
The helmet was not, the chaps were not. Now all that stuff is required.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's also advisable.
Yeah.
All right. So growing up in Denver, what was your favorite thing about growing up there?
I mean, I guess this would be no matter where you grow up. My favorite thing was the people. Like I had a great family. I had great friends.
Yeah.
I loved team sports, so I played soccer. We'd be on the basketball court every day during the summer. We played a lot of baseball. I didn't get into see. I didn't grow up with money. We were lower middle class at best.
Mhm.
So even though we lived in this great state, I couldn't take full advantage. We couldn't afford to buy a mountain bike. I couldn't afford to go to the ski resorts or any of that. So it's really just hanging out with the neighborhood. The neighborhood kids.
So if it was outside, you were doing it.
Oh, we were outside constantly.
Yeah, that's cool.
And no cell phones, right? So street lights, get
Yeah.
home.
Right. That's it, right? Mom calls, you better be booking it.
Yeah.
So, question for you. So in high school, did you have a favorite subject?
I mean, outside of physical education, I did pretty well at math. I enjoyed algebra.
Okay.
I just something about that. I just understood it.
Mhm.
Trying to get the formulas to match, and yeah, I'd say algebra.
So not a lot of gray areas in algebra, right? It's kind of black and
Yeah,
white. It's kind of it's right or it's wrong,
yeah,
Yeah.
numbers are numbers. So if you can
Yeah.
get the numbers to work, I mean, you can. Yeah.
It's interesting. You find out a lot about a person finding out what their favorite subject was, right?
Yeah.
And what their motivation was behind what they did and what they chose to, when they became 18, they chose certain things, right? And I find it fascinating that you chose the Army. I think it's cool that you chose the Army to go do the laser tag thing. It turned out to be a little bit more than that, but so how long were you in the Army?
Oh, it was not long. I was in active duty for 3 years. That was another reason that the Army. I liked the Army over the Marines because I didn't have to commit to a full 4.
Right.
So 3 years active and then 1 year National Guard.
Okay.
And I got to tell you, if you talk about points in your life that are game changers, that National Guard was one. It paid for my school, so like my school was paid for the most part with the National Guard, and then I had the GI Bill from the active service
Right.
that would cover any difference, and I
Mhm.
was getting income from the GI Bill.
Right.
But I went and got a student loan, even though I didn't need it, so that I could buy a house,
Hmm.
and ended up acquiring my first rental property. So I bought my first house when I was 21, moved into it, rented out the rooms to pay my mortgage, moved out of it with that student loan to buy another house, and I kept that as a rental. So that was my first rental property. I was 21 when I bought the first house, 23 when I turned it into a rental.
So here's the difference between you and me. You ready?
Yeah, let's hear it.
I was turned down for the first home loan I ever applied for. Guess what age I was?
18.
21.
21. Yeah. So I was denied also. That's where my grandma, yes, bless her heart.
Oh,
She
grandma
came
stepped
in,
in.
she came in, co-signed. Yeah.
Oh, what a sweetheart.
Yeah.
That's cool. See, I didn't know I didn't even know what co-signing was. And my loan officer, thank God, wouldn't help me turn a no into a yes, because if he had, I'd have never gotten into this business. I literally got into this business because I got turned down for that home loan and I was convinced I could do better than that.
Yeah.
And over $1 billion in funded home loans later, I proved it.
Nice job. Great for
Yeah.
you.
So, right. So, so in the Army, the first 3 years you're in, what was the single most important thing you learned?
I don't know if this is really a thing, but grit. Um,
Well,
there
it's important to you because this is
it's
about,
yeah, I mean, it's not like a skill or anything. That's why I struggled with the answer, Mike, but it's definitely grit because look, you can not be the smartest person in the room
Mhm,
and still outperform everybody. I mean,
mhm.
you don't need the skills necessarily if you just outwork people. So
Right.
I think that would be what I learned.
Got to be willing to bring it, right?
Yeah, it's Will Smith that said, "I don't care who you are. If we're gonna do a challenge on a treadmill." He called it the treadmill challenge. Have you heard this? Yeah, we're gonna get on the treadmill and we're gonna set it for whatever we set it for, and then we're gonna run, and I'm gonna win or I'm gonna die,
Mhm.
and it's just outwork you.
Yeah. It's an important skill, by the way.
Yeah, I mean,
Big deal. It's a big
you
deal.
can't be successful without grit. Yeah.
It's helped you a lot in your life. I guarantee it. We're going to find threads of this as we go. All right. So National Guard for a year, then you're out, sort of, right?
Yeah,
What do
then
you
I
do
got out.
then?
Yeah. So I was already working in banking at the time. When I got out of the Army,
Okay.
I worked for Chase Manhattan,
Yeah.
right when they were merging actually with JP Morgan. So
Yeah.
I was there when they merged, but it was a very short stint, really. It's 4 months, and I was in the collections department. So I was
Oh,
doing
I bet that was fun.
oh, it was terrible. Outbound calls to delinquent mortgage accounts.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but
Yeah.
I got an offer to work at a local bank here in Colorado, First Bank. In fact, I think they might have a couple of branches in California, but it's definitely a Denver bank.
Mhm.
And I worked in their call center, but on that one, it was inbound calls and it was helping people with loans. So
Yeah. Much
second
better.
mortgages, car loans, credit cards. So I was doing a lot of the applications and consulting all that over the phone. So I was definitely in a cubicle and I was in a call center, but I was working in banking, which helped me a lot.
Yeah. One is anguish, the other's hope,
That's
right?
exactly.
Huge
Oh my
difference.
gosh. The
Huge
collections
difference.
is I hats off to anyone that does that.
Yeah. No kidding.
I know it's important and we need it, but my goodness.
So or just after the Great Recession, JP Morgan Chase reached out to me,
Oh yeah.
and yeah, and through an intermediary, and I had a radio show, my very first radio show in 2011 here in San Diego. And they had thousands of homeowners that they couldn't get a hold of through their collections department. And they wanted a proposal from me to do a radio show for borrowers of JP Morgan Chase. Like literally, they would sponsor it. It would be just for them to try and call them out, so to speak, right? And get them to talk with us because we had saved thousands and thousands of homes from foreclosure in the previous weeks with a company called, or with a group called NACA, Neighborhood Assistance Corporation of America. They came to San Diego right when we were starting the show. And I ended up volunteering with them and we ended up doing a bunch of stuff and helping and all that, right? And Chase took note of it. They paid attention to it and reached out to us. It never went anywhere, but we did put a proposal together to assist collections in trying to get a hold of these borrowers. And part of it was, and you remember this, Chase took over Washington Mutual. They took over one interesting portfolio when they did. And so that was a part of it, was they were trying to get through. I don't know if you knew about all this, but they had warehouses that they were trying to access that had original notes and all that kind of thing. And people had been fired that were running those warehouses. And man, it was rough for a while for them.
I did
I
not know
felt
that.
for them. I really did. So anyway, it was an interesting time for everybody, but for them in particular, it was pretty crazy. So, but that was an interesting time with them. So you go into originations basically, right? And you're solving problems and helping people. And then where do you go from there?
Yeah, so those are all inbound for the bank. So I was already buying properties around
were
that
you?
time. So
That's cool.
that's sort of the time where I bought that second one. So when you have when I worked in the inbound call center at First Bank, I had a lot of downtime. So I wasn't had like a call quota or anything. It was just if they called in, then I'd answer it and I'd try to help them. So there might be, 20 minutes, 15-minute, whatever lulls between calls. So I would study and get work done. But I'd also read a lot. So I was reading books about finance and investing, and I had already read Rich Dad Poor Dad when I was in the Army. So I already knew, real estate was really kind of the direction I wanted to go.
Mhm.
So I was studying real estate investing, and then on the weekends, mostly on the weekends, I would go out and meet homeowners to buy their house, like motivated sellers. So I would do some marketing. I would do a lot of outbound calls for that business that I started, and I would buy houses, and I got pretty good at it. And I ended up leaving the bank and focusing on real estate investing full time. So I'd buy a house, maybe two houses in a month, every single month, and I'd flip them or I'd hold them, do a lot of a lot of wholesaling, and that's
Mhm.
how I was making a living. But it got difficult as I progressed through my career because look, rental properties are great and will make you rich. I have no question about that. In fact, that's the surest way, in my opinion, to build wealth.
Yeah.
But it's a slow game. It's a long game,
Mhm.
and you have these dreams about replacing your income with cash flow from rental properties, but that's very, very difficult to do. And I
Yeah.
learned that. So I was like, I need multiple streams. I need to find other ways to have income coming in.
Mhm.
So I went out and got a job, decided to use my degree. I have a degree in finance. So I went out, used my degree, got a job, and worked at a company in downtown Denver, one of the big high-rise buildings, and we were working for Credit Suisse was our client. We were a Wall Street firm, and we were doing mortgage bond analysis. So I was an analyst for mortgage bonds, and this was in
Cool.
2006, seven, and we analyzed subprime mortgage, if you could believe that. So to have you tell me a story about the credit crisis in '08 that I didn't know surprised me a little bit, but I didn't know about the warehouse issues.
Mhm. Well, it was a logistics thing. They got it figured out, but you know, you remember this, right? JP Morgan Chase takes over Washington Mutual in a weekend.
Mhm.
You're gonna have some challenges.
Oh, for sure.
Okay. And they had some issues. They had some honest to goodness challenges with paperwork and warehouses and logistics, and they got it figured out, but it took a little while. And pardon me. And you know, it was an interesting time, man. It was really kind of crazy. And the reason I started the radio show in 2011 was people were losing their houses right and left to foreclosure. And I was an REO broker, still am, but I was the REO broker, and Chase or Washington Mutual, one of them would reach out to me and say, "Hey, go sell this house." My job was to go knock on the door, and if the former owner was still there, my job was to tell them, "You don't own the house anymore. The bank does."
Oh man.
Right? And we're going to have to figure out a way to help you move. Okay. Some of these people had no clue. One of them turned to me and said, there's no way that they own this house now. I'm like, how's that possible? They said, well, I just paid a law firm $9,000 yesterday, and they guaranteed me that my house would not be foreclosed on. They paid that law firm $9,000 5 days after it had been sold at trustee
Oh,
sale.
that is sad. That is
Okay.
terrible.
Dude,
I've
it
heard these
was
stories too.
this stuff was horrible. Okay. It was so bad. And and I got so frustrated because here I am, just like you're talking about collections, right? Here I am on the firing line, and I'm dealing with people that, like a single mom or a mom who's married, but her husband's moved out, and he was responsible for making the payments on the mortgage, and now she doesn't own the house anymore, and she's got a 3-year-old, hugging her leg as I'm talking to her. And I mean, it was gut wrenching, man. And so I'm having these conversations with people about, look, here's what the truth is. Here's what's really going on. And I'm having one-on-one, one-on-two, one-on-three conversations. I needed a bigger megaphone. And so I went down to the local AM radio station, met with the station manager, and I said, listen, I need a bigger megaphone. I need to talk to thousands of people at a time. And I think this is the way to do it. And he's like, can you start today? No, but give me a couple of weeks. Let me get some sponsors, and right. We took the least listened to hour they had in their entire weekend lineup. And in 8 weeks, according to Arbitron, we doubled the number of listeners.
Great.
And we were number one in all of AM radio in our time slot.
And you were helping people. You were changing lives.
And we saved thousands of homes from foreclosure. It was crazy. So it was cool. It was a really neat time.
Yeah, Mike, I'm getting
in
chills
fact, I
hearing
just
your
talked to
story.
one of the guys from NACA the other day. He's coming out here from the East Coast, and we're going to get together and go hang out. So pretty cool. And I had Bruce Marks on the program. We actually got his life story on tape. So it was kind of cool. Yeah, it was an interesting time.
That's a great story.
So Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I love this. I'm a huge Kiyosaki fan. So you get that other source of income, analyzing,
trash bonds.
Analyzing junk,
yeah.
right? I mean, so you're analyzing subprime mortgage bonds, and you're working with Credit Suisse, obviously, as a client. So what happens when the Great Recession hits?
So I'd exited that.
Oh, had you? Okay, so you already gone?
Yeah, so I was in there for 2 years, but just under 2 years working for that firm. Clayton was the name of it. And I just really had a passion for, Main Street, not Wall Street. I wanted to be flipping houses and helping people in Colorado. So I got recruited because of my success as an investor and the amount of volume I was able to do with just like a one-man show. I got recruited to be a mortgage broker, and this was back before the SAFE Act, right? Because it was before the crash. So there's no licensing. I mean, this truly was the Wild West.
Yeah.
And so I just started writing loans to that was able to replace that income while I still focused on investing, trying to keep that going and get better and better as a real estate investor. And then 2008 hit, obviously, and everything just started crumbling underneath me. That was a very challenging time in my life, Mike. Like some of the stories that I hear you saying with the child holding the mom's leg, it really brings me back because I went through a lot of that. I lost several properties. I lost pretty much everything. I was married at the time, and I had just had a daughter. So we had a newborn. It was crazy. And then the person I was working with, Susan, she took me under her wing and helped me become a better mortgage consultant. She decided to exit the business because she was losing everything, right? We were all losing everything. Yeah. And so she exited, and I decided to start Pine Financial. So that's how Pine Financial was born. And then I got out of the conventional world. I didn't want to do FHA, VA, conventional loans. That wasn't for me. I wanted a little bit more control over the business. So I focused strictly on private money. And so we were just raising private money and lending it out to real estate investors, which is exactly what I love to do, right? So that's how Pine Financial was born. And a lot of great companies were born in 2008 and 9 and 10 during that time period.
Yeah, out of necessity more than anything else. So you start Pine Financial, and obviously you have an extensive background because you were flipping houses and doing all the hard money, private money stuff anyway. And so you were a consumer of it before you became a provider of it, which is a very cool thing. You don't often come across that, right? You often come across people that get into the business and then they become a consumer of it after they're providing it. Yeah, you're sort of the other way around, which is kind of cool. So it gives you a unique perspective and a way that you can have a conversation with somebody in an educated and experienced manner where you're coming in almost like a journeyman, right? And you're saying, okay, if you're going to flip this house, we'll finance it, but here's what you got to do, right? That's kind of a really cool thing that most lenders don't have. to be honest with you. Okay. So that sets you apart. That's one of the reasons why you've been so successful. I think anyway, because you're able to come at it from a completely different perspective.
Yeah, and our focus, that's a great point, Mike. And our focus is helping our clients succeed. Look, we don't succeed unless our clients do.
Yeah.
So I agree with you. Being in the trenches for so long, understanding the business so well has helped tremendously because I know exactly what our clients need.
Yeah.
Right. I've been there. I still am there. I still love buying and selling houses, and I do more commercial stuff now than residential, but I'm still highly involved in acquisition and disposition of assets. Yeah.
There might be
I do some depositions too.
We try to avoid that part, but right.
It's funny.
No, I'm with you. It was a Freudian slip, right? So let me ask you this. So you did a bunch of residential deals over the years. What made you decide to go into commercial or gravitate to commercial?
So it's people. There's one of my good friends. His name is Rafiq. He's out of Minnesota, and he's just a powerhouse investor. And so him and I connected, and we have a lot of. I mean, we think the same. So we hang out, and I got to know him pretty well. And he had moved into commercial, and he was like trying to drag me along. And then I ended up going into a commercial mastermind group. It's very expensive. It's like 30 grand a year. So I was pushing it off for so long. And then I decided to go ahead and do it. And I've just met the most amazing people. Some of all of my closest friends are all real estate investors, and it's because of groups and rooms like that.
Yeah.
So I've been doing that now for many years, and it's just the people that want to lift you up, and yeah, I don't know how else to say that, but it's definitely the people that want to lift you up, and that's what they were doing, and that's where my passion was.
So let's stop for just a second, if it's okay. I think this is incredibly important, and that's why I want to talk about it. I want to sort of spotlight this a little. So you've done all these over the years. You've done all these residential deals, right? Mm-hmm. And you meet this guy. You guys think a lot alike. He's trying to get you into the business, and you sort of put it off. But you end up joining this mastermind group, and yeah, it's expensive, okay? But usually anything that's worth it is, okay? There are a lot of people, and here's why I want to talk about this. There are a lot of people that I talk to. I'm sure you can imagine, having done this for 32 years. There are a lot of people that I talk to that need. We hope you enjoyed another episode of the Mike Litton Experience. If you did, do us a favor, smash that subscribe button, tell your friends, family, and coworkers about our program, and wherever you get your podcasts, please leave us a rating. It helps us to connect with quality people just like you.
And that's a wrap. Another episode of the Mike Litton Experience in the books. Reach out to Mike on Instagram at Litton Realty. Want to meet with Mike? Check out calendly.com/Rio760.